Had you ever been the punchline to a cruel joke in a room full of people? Chloe was publicly humiliated and called a whale by the city's most elite socialite. But her tormentor made one fatal mistake. The city's most dangerous underworld boss was watching from the balcony. The air in the crystal ballroom at the Chicago Waldorf Astoria was thick with the scent of imported orchids and expensive perfume. It was the annual Heart of the City charity gala, a night where the wealthiest elites gathered to outdonate, outdress, and outgossip one another. For 26-year-old Chloe Higgins, however, the evening was anything but glamorous. It was a high-stakes crucible. As the lead event coordinator for Lumiere Katerning, Chloe was the invisible engine keeping the opulent machine running. She had been on her feet since 5 in the morning, battling delivery delays, temperamental chefs, and a floor arrangement that had threatened to collapse just an hour before doors opened. But the physical exhaustion was nothing compared to the quiet, gnawing anxiety that had been eating at her all night. Chloe was a curvy girl. She had always been plus-sized, a fact that had never truly bothered her until she stepped into the hypercritical world of high-end event planning. After a particularly rough year, marked by a painful breakup and the loss of her father, stress eating had added a few more inches to her waistline. Tonight she was squeezed into a modest black uniform dress that fit entirely too tight across her hips and bust. Every time she breathed, she felt the fabric strain, a constant physical reminder that she didn't quite belong in this room of rail-thin heiresses and chiseled trust fund heirs. Enter Penelope Crawford. Penelope was the reigning queen of Chicago's high society. Tall, strikingly thin, and draped in a custom emerald green silk gown that clung to her sharp frame, she was the heiress to a massive real estate empire. Penelope didn't just walk, she glided, flanked by a court of sycophants who laughed a little too loudly at her jokes. She was known for her biting wit and her absolute lack of empathy. To Penelope, the service staff were not people. They were moving furniture. From the VIP balcony overlooking the main floor, a pair of cold steel-gray eyes observed the ballroom. Declan O'Sullivan swirled a glass of neat whiskey, his expression entirely unreadable. To the legitimate business world, Declan was a venture capitalist with a heavy hand in shipping and real estate. To the city's underground, he was the undisputed head of the O'Sullivan Syndicate, a ruthless, calculated man who governed Chicago's darker dealings with an iron fist. He loathed these social events, attending only to keep up appearances and monitor his investments. Declan's gaze had been drawn to Chloe earlier in the evening. He had watched her patiently de-escalate a screaming match between two rival chefs in the kitchen, offering a warm, genuine smile to a nervous young busboy who had dropped a fork in a room full of plastic faces and hollow conversations. Chloe's quiet, exhausted kindness was the only authentic thing Declan had seen all night. He noticed the way she tugged self-consciously at the hem of her tight black dress. He noticed the soft curve of her jaw, the messy bun slipping from its pins, and the sheer determination in her hazel eyes. Down on the floor, the disaster was brewing. Chloe had been tasked with delivering a tray of vintage Dom Perignon flutes to the platinum donor circle Penelope's table. Her hands were shaking slightly from fatigue, but she gripped the heavy silver tray, keeping her eyes focused on her destination. Penelope, deep in conversation with a local politician, caught sight of Chloe approaching. A cruel, bored glint flashed in the heiress's eyes. She turned to her friends, a perfectly manicured hand covering a smirk. "Watch this," she whispered. As Chloe navigated the tight space between the velvet-draped tables, Penelope casually, deliberately extended her long, stiletto-clad leg directly into the aisle. Chloe didn't see the shoe until it was too late. Her toe caught the sharp heel. The world seemed to shift into agonizing slow motion. Chloe pitched forward, her arms flailing as she tried to save the tray. It was useless. Crash. The sound of 20 crystal flutes shattering against the marble floor echoed like gunshots through the ballroom. The music halted. The low hum of chatter instantly died. Hundreds of eyes snapped toward the center of the room. Chloe hit the ground hard, her knees taking the brunt of the impact. Icy champagne soaked through the front of her tight dress, chilling her to the bone. Sharp shards of crystal bit into her palms, but the physical pain was eclipsed by a suffocating wave of utter, paralyzing humiliation. "Oh my God," Penelope's voice pierced the dead silence, artificially loud and dripping with theatrical shock. "Are you blind, or did you just smell the buffet on the other side of the room?" A smattering of nervous laughter rippled through Penelope's inner circle. Chloe's face burned hot. She scrambled to her hands and knees, frantically trying to pick up the broken glass with trembling, bleeding fingers. I'm so sorry," she stammered, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm so sorry, Miss Crawford. I didn't see—" "Now, Of course you didn't see," Penelope interrupted, taking a step closer and looking down her nose at the girl on the floor. "You were probably too busy thinking about your next meal. I mean, look at you. It's a miracle that cheap polyester hasn't burst open already. They really should implement weight limits for the service staff. It's a hazard. You're practically a moving roadblock." The laughter from the surrounding tables grew louder, emboldened by Penelope's cruelty. Some guests looked away, visibly uncomfortable, but in the world of the elite, no one dared cross a Crawford. No one stepped forward to help. "Get up and get out of my sight," Penelope sneered, her voice dropping to a vicious hiss, meant only for Chloe and the immediate circle. "You're ruining my dress with your splashing, you clumsy fat cow." A single hot tear spilled over Chloe's eyelashes, mixing with the champagne on her cheeks. She felt so incredibly small, a massive, unlovable burden taking up too much space on the floor. She wanted the marble to open up and swallow her whole. She tried to stand, but her heel slipped on the wet floor, sending her back to her knees in the puddle of wine and glass. More laughter, more whispers. Up on the balcony, the glass of whiskey in Declan O'Sullivan's hand shattered. He didn't flinch as the liquor dripped over his knuckles. His eyes, suddenly dark and utterly terrifying, locked onto Penelope Crawford. Declan despised bullies. He had clawed his way up from the bloody, starving gutters of Hal's Kitchen in New York before taking over Chicago. He knew what it was to be stepped on, and he knew exactly how to break the people who did the stepping. The descent of Declan O'Sullivan from the VIP balcony was not loud, but it possessed a gravitational pull that commanded the entire ballroom. As he walked down the grand sweeping staircase, his posture was rigid, his broad shoulders filling out a meticulously tailored, midnight blue Tom Ford tuxedo. He exuded an aura of quiet, lethal violence that had taken him years to perfect. As his highly polished Oxford shoes hit the main floor, a ripple of unease washed over the crowd. The snickering around Penelope's table died abruptly. The guests, CEOs, judges, and socialites parted like the Red Sea, instinctually stepping back to give the man a wide berth. They might not have known the exact body count attributed to the O'Sullivan name, but they knew enough to be afraid. Penelope, noticing the shift in the room's energy, turned around. Seeing the billionaire venture capitalist approaching, her cruel smirk vanished, instantly replaced by a dazzling, practiced smile. She smoothed her emerald gown and took a step toward him. "Declan, darling," Penelope purred, projecting her voice to ensure everyone heard she was on a first-name basis with him. "I'm so sorry for the disturbance. This clumsy girl just completely lost her footing. Good help is so impossible to find these days, wouldn't you agree?" The laughtro. Odd. Declan didn't even look at her. He walked right past Penelope as if she were nothing more than a stain on the wallpaper. The heiress smile froze, a flicker of genuine confusion and rising panic crossing her perfectly contoured face. Declan stopped at the edge of the puddle of champagne and broken glass. He looked down at Chloe. She was still on her knees, her hands shaking so violently she couldn't grasp the shards. Her dark hair had fallen out of its bun, curtaining her tear-streaked face. Her breathing was ragged, shallow gasps of panic. Slowly, Deliberately, the most feared man in Chicago went down on one knee right in the middle of the mess. Heedless of the champagne soaking into his multi-$1,000 trousers, the ballroom was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. "Leave the glass," Declan said. His voice was a low, rough baritone, laced with a faint, old-world Irish lilt that only surfaced when he was deeply emotional or profoundly dangerous. Chloe gasped, startled by the voice. She looked up, her wide, tear-filled hazel eyes meeting his slate-gray ones. She froze. Up close, Declan was terrifyingly handsome, a sharp jawline dusted with stubble, a small, faded scar slicing through his left eyebrow, and eyes that missed absolutely nothing. You shouldn't be down here," Chloe whispered, her voice cracking. "Your suit, I'll clean it up. I promise. I told you to leave the glass a store," Declan said softly, using a term of endearment he hadn't spoken in a decade. He reached out, his large, calloused hands gently taking hers. He turned her palms upward, inspecting the small cuts from the crystal. His jaw ticked, a muscle jumping in his cheek as he saw the blood. He pulled a silk handkerchief from his breast pocket and carefully wiped the blood from her hands. "Are you badly hurt?" Chloe shook her head slowly, completely bewildered. "No, just my pride." "Then let's get you off this floor," Declan murmured. He stood up, keeping one hand firmly wrapped around hers, and gently pulled her to her feet. Chloe swayed slightly, her adrenaline crashing, and Declan immediately placed a strong, stabilizing hand on her waist. He didn't pull away in disgust at her size. Instead, his grip was warm, solid, and fiercely protective. Chloe shivered. The front of her dress was soaked, the thin material clinging to her curves and turning uncomfortably translucent under the bright chandelier lights. Sensing her discomfort, Declan seamlessly slipped out of his tuxedo jacket. With a fluid motion, he draped it over Chloe's shoulders. The jacket was massive on her, engulfing her in the scent of cedarwood, expensive fabric, and a hint of fine tobacco. It colored her stained dress completely. She clutched the lapels, pulling the warmth around her like a shield. Only then did Declan turn his attention to Penelope Crawford. The temperature in the room seemed to plummet by 20 degrees. Declan didn't yell. He didn't raise his voice. He simply looked at the heiress with a stare so cold it could have frozen the lake outside. "Miss Crawford," Declan began, his voice carrying clearly in the dead silent room. "I was observing from the balcony. You deliberately tripped this woman." Penelope's face drained of color. Declan, you must be mistaken. I merely shifted my weight, and she came barging through like a 'do not lie to me.'" Declan cut her off. The softness was gone from his voice, replaced by a razor-sharp edge that made several guests physically flinch. "I watched you extend your leg. I watched you shatter her tray. And then I sat there and listened as you mocked her appearance to entertain your sycophants." Penelope took a step back, her chest heaving. "She ruined my shoes, and frankly, Declan, she doesn't belong here. Look at her. It's a high society event, not a cafeteria." "Not. I'm sore to her shoulders." Declan took one slow, deliberate step toward Penelope. The heiress' friends immediately scattered, leaving her entirely alone. "A woman's worth is not measured by the space she occupies, Penelope," Declan said, his tone lethal. "It is measured by the grace, character, and kindness she carries, traits that you evidently possess in negative quantities." He paused, letting the silence stretch, twisting a knife. "I'm currently the primary backer for your father's new development in the West Loop, am I not?" Declan asked casually. Penelope swallowed hard, nodding mutely. "Consider that funding immediately withdrawn," Declan stated, his voice ringing with absolute finality. "Furthermore, I will be making a few phone calls tonight. I suspect you will find that the local unions are going to experience severe, prolonged, and incredibly expensive delays on all Crawford properties moving forward. Your little stunt tonight just cost your family roughly $40 million. A collective gasp echoed through the ballroom. Penelope's knees buckled slightly, her hands flying to her mouth. You can't do that over some caterer. She is not just some caterer, Declan said, his eyes flashing with dark promise. He didn't know who Chloe was yet, but he knew one thing for certain. She was now under his protection, and I can do whatever I please. If I ever hear of you speaking to her or anyone else in this room with such vile disrespect again, losing money will be the least of your family's concerns. Do we have an understanding? The implicit threat of violence was heavily veiled, but in the circles Declan operated, everyone heard it loud and clear. Penelope, trembling violently and fighting back hysterical tears, nodded. She turned and fled the ballroom, her emerald gown swishing behind her, utterly humiliated and socially destroyed in less than 3 minutes. Declan turned his back on the stunned crowd, dismissing them entirely. He looked down at Chloe, his expression softening instantly as his eyes met hers. "Come," Declan said gently, placing a hand on the small of her back through the thick fabric of his jacket. "Let's get you out of here." Guided by the most dangerous man in the city, Chloe walked out of the crystal ballroom. No one laughed. No one whispered. For the first time in her life, as she walked beside Declan O'Sullivan, Chloe felt completely, unconditionally safe. The bitter November wind howling off Lake Michigan whipped through the valet station outside the Waldorf Astoria. But Chloe didn't feel the cold. She was entirely numb, insulated by the heavy wool and silk of Declan O'Sullivan's tuxedo jacket and the lingering shock of the last 10 minutes. A sleek, armored, midnight black Mercedes Maybach glided to a halt at the curb before the valet could even signal. The driver, a mountain of a man named Liam with a distinct scar across his jaw, stepped out. He didn't question why his billionaire boss was emerging from the city's most exclusive gala without his jacket, escorting a soaking wet, shivering caterer. Liam merely opened the rear door with a respectful nod. "Get in," Declan instructed softly, guiding her into the plush, heated leather interior. Chloe slid into the back seat, the scent of expensive leather and Declan's cedarwood cologne enveloping her. Declan climbed in beside her, filling the space with his commanding presence. "The St. Regis penthouse, Liam," Declan said, his voice returning to its usual, impenetrable calm. "And make a call to clean up the mess at the Waldorf. I want it known that Miss Crawford left due to a sudden, severe illness." "Understood, boss," Liam replied, the partition sliding up silently to give them total privacy. As the Maybach pulled into the shimmering Chicago traffic, the adrenaline finally began to drain from Chloe's system, leaving behind a profound, trembling exhaustion. She looked down at her hands. The small cuts from the crystal had stopped bleeding, but her palms were stained with dried champagne and blood. "You shouldn't have done that," Chloe whispered into the quiet hum of the engine, breaking the silence. Her voice was raspy, thick with unshed tears. Declan turned his head, his slate-gray eyes studying her under the passing streetlights. "Shouldn't have done what, Chloe?" "Demanded basic human decency. Cost yourself $40 million, she replied, looking up to meet his gaze. "I know who Penelope Crawford is. I know who her father, Arthur, is. They own half the West Loop. You just burned a massive bridge for a clumsy girl who ruins events. She was right, you know. I don't belong there. I'm just the invisible help." Declan's jaw clenched. He reached into the built-in console, pouring a small measure of amber liquid into a crystal tumbler. He handed it to her. "Drink. It will settle your nerves." Chloe took a hesitant sip. It was an incredibly smooth, smoky scotch that burned a warm path down her throat. "Do not ever repeat those words," Declan said, his tone low and dangerously even. "You are not invisible, and you are certainly not what that venomous woman claimed you were. I grew up in Hell's Kitchen, Chloe. I wore shoes with holes in the soles until I was 15, and I served men who thought their wealth gave them the right to treat me like a stray dog. I learned early on that the true measure of a person isn't the size of their bank account or the cut of their dress. It's how they act when they think no one with power is watching. Chloe stared at him, captivated by the raw intensity in his voice. But why me? You don't even know me. I know enough, Declan murmured, his gaze dropping briefly to her lips before meeting her eyes again. I watched you work tonight. I watched you treat the busboys with the same respect you gave the donors. You have a kind heart in a city that usually crushes them. I protect what I value, and tonight I decided I value you. That's what I'll so I is mad. Before Chloe could process the weight of his confession, her cell phone buzzed violently in her uniform pocket. She jumped, pulling it out. The caller ID flashed Richard Sterling, Lumiere boss. A fresh wave of panic hit her. It's my boss, she choked out. He's going to fire me. The Crawford family practically keeps Lumiere Catering in business. Answer it, Declan commanded gently. Put it on speaker. Trembling, Chloe accepted the call and pressed the speaker button. Chloe? Richard's voice exploded through the quiet car, shrill and frantic. What the hell did you do? Arthur Crawford just called me screaming. He says you assaulted his daughter, ruined her dress, and somehow manipulated Declan O'Sullivan into pulling his funding. Arthur is threatening to bankrupt me, Chloe. He's sending his fixers to the office right now to seize our assets, unless I hand you over for a public apology and pay for the damages. Chloe felt the blood drain from her face. Arthur Crawford wasn't just a businessman. Rumors circulated that he used dirty union muscle, specifically a brutal enforcer named Thomas Gallagher, to intimidate his rivals. Richard, I didn't assault her, I swear, Chloe cried, tears finally spilling over. She tripped me, and I didn't ask Mr. Bud O'Sullivan to do anything. Declan smoothly took the phone from her shaking hands. Mr. Sterling, Declan said, his voice dropping an octave, instantly turning cold and lethal. The line went dead silent. Who is this? Richard stammered. This is Declan O'Sullivan. You are currently speaking to me on a secured line. Listen to me very carefully, Richard. Chloe Higgins no longer works for you. And if Arthur Crawford has sent Thomas Gallagher and his thugs to your office, I suggest you stay exactly where you are. I am coming to resolve this. Mr. O'Sullivan, please, I don't want any trouble. Declan ended the call and tossed the phone onto the leather seat. He leaned forward, tapping the glass partition. It lowered instantly. Change of plans, Liam, Declan ordered, the old-world Irish lilt bleeding heavily into his voice, the ultimate sign of the monster waking up. Head to the Lumiere Catering headquarters on River North. Call the boys. Tell them to meet us there. Heavy, yes, sir. Liam replied without missing a beat, the Maybach suddenly accelerating with terrifying speed. Chloe shrank back into the seat, her heart hammering against her ribs. She looked at the man sitting next to her. The venture capitalist facade was gone. In his place sat the undisputed king of Chicago's underworld. You're going to fight them, she whispered, terrified for him. Arthur Crawford's men, they're dangerous, Declan. Declan turned to her, a dark, chilling smile playing on his lips. He reached out, his thumb gently wiping a tear from her cheek. My sweet girl, he murmured, his touch impossibly tender compared to the violence in his eyes. Arthur Crawford thinks he swims with sharks. Tonight I am going to remind him that I am the Darkwater. The Lumiere Catering headquarters was a converted warehouse in the trendy River North district. When the Maybach pulled up to the loading docks, the scene was already steeped in chaos. 3 black SUVs were parked haphazardly out front. Inside the glass-fronted lobby, Chloe could see her boss, Richard, pinged against a reception desk by 2 massive men in cheap suits. A third man, Thomas Gallagher, Crawford's notorious union enforcer, was shouting in Richard's face. Before Chloe could even unbuckle her seatbelt, 4 more black vehicles swarmed the lot, completely boxing in Crawford's SUVs. A dozen men in tailored dark suits stepped out, moving with terrifying silent precision. They were Declan's syndicate soldiers. "Stay in the car, Chloe," Declan commanded softly. He shrugged off the lack of his jacket, stepping out into the freezing wind in just his tailored white dress shirt and vest, looking every inch the ruthless mob boss he was. Chloe couldn't just sit there. Her heart pounded in her throat as she cracked the door open, needing to see, needing to know he was safe. Declan walked into the lobby, Liam and 4 of his elite guards flanking him. The sheer atmospheric pressure of the room shifted the second he crossed the threshold. Thomas Gallagher stopped yelling and turned around, his smug expression faltering as he recognized the man standing before him. The 2 goons holding Richard immediately let him go, taking a cautious step back. "Gallagher," Declan said, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. It wasn't a greeting. It was a death sentence. "I believe you are trespassing on property that is about to come under my protection." Gallagher swallowed hard, trying to maintain his bravado. "Mr. O'Sullivan, Arthur Crawford sent us. We have a grievance with this company and a specific employee, a fat bitch named Chloe who disrespected his daughter. We're just here to collect what's owed." Hearing the insult, Declan didn't shout. He didn't blink. He simply nodded to Liam. In a blur of motion, Liam crossed the room. He didn't use a weapon. He grabbed Gallagher by the throat, lifted the 200-pound enforcer off his feet, and slammed him against the brick wall so hard the framed catering awards rattled. The 2 other goons reached into their jackets, but Declan's men instantly drew suppressed firearms, aiming them squarely at the men's heads. Nobody moved. The silence was deafening, broken only by Gallagher's desperate gasping for air. "Let me be entirely clear," Declan said, walking slowly toward the pinned enforcer. He stopped inches from Gallagher's purple face. "Chloe Higgins is under my personal protection. To insult her is to insult me. To threaten her is to declare war on the O'Sullivan family. You tell Arthur Crawford that his union backing is gone. His permits are pulled. His properties will burn if he ever speaks her name again." Declan leaned in closer, his voice a lethal whisper. "And if you ever use that derogatory word to describe her again, I will have Liam remove your tongue with a rusty spoon. Nod if you comprehend." Gallagher nodded frantically, his eyes wide with genuine terror. "Drop him," Declan ordered. Liam let go and Gallagher collapsed to the floor, coughing violently. "Take your trash and get out of my city." The 3 men scrambled out of the lobby, pushing past Declan's guards in a desperate bid to escape. Richard Sterling, pale and shaking, slid down the front of the reception desk. "Mr. O'Sullivan, thank you. They were going to destroy me. I didn't do this for you, Richard," Declan said coldly, turning to the terrified business owner. "You are perfectly willing to throw Chloe to the wolves to save your own skin. I am buying Lumiere Catering. Liam will wire you $5 million by morning, a generous offer for a company I could simply take. You will sign the deed over, and you will leave Chicago." Richard nodded dumbly, too shocked to argue. Declan turned and walked back out the glass doors. He saw Chloe standing by the open door of the Maybach, shivering in his oversized jacket, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock, awe, and an undeniable magnetic pull toward him. He closed the distance between them, his harsh edges melting away the moment he looked at her. He gently pushed her back into the warmth of the car and slid in beside her, pulling the door shut. "It's done," Declan said softly, taking her cold hands in his. "Arthur Crawford will never bother you again, and Lumiere Cateau Court is yours to run as you see fit." Chloe stared at him, tears welling in her eyes, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming sense of belonging. "You bought a company for me, Declan? I can't accept that. I'm just—" "You are exactly who you are meant to be," Declan interrupted, lifting her hand to press a soft, lingering kiss to her knuckles. "Brilliant. Beautiful. And mine, if you'll have me. No one will ever make you feel small again, Chloe. I will burn the world down before I let them." Looking into the eyes of the city's most feared man, Chloe finally realized the truth. The high society elites had mocked her for the space she took up. But Declan O'Sullivan was giving her the entire world to rule. She leaned forward, closing the gap between them, and pressed her lips to his, surrendering entirely to the beautiful monster who had loved her from the shadows. Are you ready to see more thrilling stories like this? Hit the like button if Declan's revenge gave you chills. Share this video with your friends who love a good mafia romance twist. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Ring the bell so you never miss out on our daily dramatic stories. Drop a comment below, what would you have done to Penelope?